I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging from yada yada country. And thank you to the previous speakers. Such powerful, insightful stories. On the weekend, I read a quote from the inimitable Dame Maggie Smith, and she said, think of yourself as a set of nesting dolls of the iterations and the layers of your life that emerge over a life. And we've heard so many of those this afternoon. And I come with my set of nesting dolls. Oops, where is she? Hard to see, sorry. But I hasten to say I actually settled on this metaphor before I read the Maggie Smith quote. So this was me in 2012. I was flying. As part of the National Literacy and Numeracy Partnership Project, I had a role as a literacy consultant in a school in the Pilbara, 1,500 kilometres north of Perth. The school had a transitory population and an Indigenous enrolment, a 40% Indigenous enrolment. And my brief was to provide professional development for the young teaching staff and to provide school-based support to elevate the school's performance in the NAPLAN assessments. At the end of that year, every aspect of my life changed. Every aspect. It became evident during the course of the year that my husband, Fred, had a medical problem, and I made a decision to retire to enable us to be closer to medical support, which was scarce in the Pilbara. During the course of that year also, our West Australian property sold, and we were in the process of building a house in Victoria with a view to move to be closer to our beautiful grandchildren. So it's now 2013. Whoops, a daisy, she's got the wobbles. I resigned from a job that I loved, and we've relocated almost 4,000 kilometres across the country. I was a stranger, adrift in a new town, where Fred's illness limited opportunities to forge new social networks. Joining local groups wasn't really a possibility. And the barbecues and dinner parties that we envisaged we would host vaporised into illusions like distant dreamtime spirits way off on the horizon where reality and fantasy merge into oneness. It took me 3 years to adapt to not going to work. I missed the intellectual stimulation. I missed the social connection. I missed making a contribution, and I missed feeling relevant. By 2014, I'd not only lost my professional identity, I was also losing my personal persona as my husband's care needs became greater. I was transitioning from wife to the role of carer. Because of the insidious nature of dementia, the transition from spouse or partner to carer is blurred. While Fred continued to function largely independently, I felt it was demeaning for both of us for me to assume the label of carer. It wasn't until much later that I acknowledged the shift in our relationship. But at what point did that shift occur? At what point had this hideous disease eroded his independence to the point that I recognised my role had changed? And how was I to reconcile the overwhelming experience of witnessing his diminishing capacity and at the same time my own personal diminishing persona? By 2015, my life was almost completely, she's gone. By 2015, my life was almost completely ruled by dementia. Fred could no longer be left alone, and my only escape was a 20-minute dash to the supermarket when he was asleep in the recliner. I had almost no social contact. I felt trapped in someone else's disease. I was now responsible for everything, for planning and organising everything, for making every decision, for managing finances, for project managing the building of the house, and developing the acre of lunar landscape we optimistically bought with a view for converting it to some wonderful botanical retreat. I could have used some help. Our neighbours on both sides were retired, they were healthy and active, but as I struggled laying bricks for garden edges, shoveling the stones for feature areas, attempting to dig holes in the concrete like clay for planting, I remained invisible to them, apparently. I was grappling with a toxic cocktail of stress, guilt, grief, fear, anger, resentment, loneliness, denial, alienation, abandonment, and despair, and all the while attempting to conjure up a mask of serenity. The future appeared dismal, daunting, depressing. I didn't like the negative person I was becoming. In some of the literature, levels of caregiver stress are likened to PTSD symptoms. A battle raged between my destructive self-pity and the exterior I presented to the world. And I no longer knew which was the authentic me. Becoming the healthcare worker, the social worker, the memory, the voice, the judgment, the custodian of the past, the narrator of the story, the advocate on every level, diminishes energy or space to be friend, confidant, lover, or to simply be present. By 2016, I diminished even further. I was invisible in the eyes of the clinicians, and I'd not yet found my voice in the medical arena. When we visited a doctor for Parade, not one of them ever asked how I was doing. I was on alert 24/7, sleep deprived, constantly vigilant, and invisible, apparently. And, like all informal caregivers, I've become very weedy. I was invisible in the eyes of the government. According to a study by Flinders University in 2016, when we were in the midst of this maelstrom, the average cost of providing residential care for a person with dementia was $82,300. I'm sure it's considerably more now. While Fred remained at home, that was money I was saving the government. We didn't qualify for carer payment, which is means tested. I did receive carer allowance, which at the time was approximately $168 a fortnight. In June of that year, Fred had been admitted to residential care, and a friend invited me to a family celebration in Sydney. The weekend was a whirlwind of sightseeing, theatre, elegant dining, wonderful company, and merriment. But in the midst of the euphoria, I realised that this was the first time in 4 years I had done anything that didn't have a thread linking back to dementia in some way. I didn't belong in this world of normality. I had no voice. I was invisible. So viewing the world through the eyes of the dementia caregiver, communities would be dementia-friendly. They would be non-biased, non-judgmental. People would be aware and care about the implications of this disease. Retail outlets, supermarkets, pharmacies, cafes, restaurants, hairdressers would all be aware and afford the person with a diagnosis the dignity and respect that they deserve. Sporting groups, recreational groups, bowling clubs, golf clubs, men's sheds, craft groups would have strategies in place to enable the person with a diagnosis to continue to participate and engage in the activities that they've enjoyed over time. Just as there are tandem partners for vision impaired cyclists to enable them to continue to get their exercise, their social contact, feel the wind in their face, these other organisations would have mentors or partners to work or to play or to engage next to the person with a diagnosis. And in this dementia-friendly community of mine, there would be consideration for the carer also. People would reach out and offer tangible help beyond the simple, let me know if there's anything I can do, because that's really cop-out. And we know that, or we hope, that the person's not really going to reach out and ask for help. We are all going to be touched by dementia in some way. In Australia, it is the second leading cause of death after heart disease. And for women, it is the leading cause of death. And there's a new diagnosis every 6 minutes. In an ageing population, those of us yet not touched by this disease will be it a family member, a relative, friend, neighbour, work colleague. We are all going to be encountered. So my message in closing is, if you know of a family navigating the dementia labyrinth, don't allow the person with the diagnosis or the care partner to become invisible. Offer the gift of your time. And on the question of time, if I had time, I would reconstruct my nesting dolls. But I'd just like to finish with saying, oh, God, where's she gone? This is me, bigger and louder than I was in 2012. I've found my voice. I'm no longer invisible. I am woman. Hear me roar.